What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you with a complete redraft of the rookie drafts that you guys would have done back in May, back in, April, whenever you guys did this. What we're going to be doing basically is borderline summarizing everybody's rookie season and talking about what everybody's dynasty outlook is going forward based on the, 14, 15 games of data that we've seen thus far. How does our rookie drafts change? Where do the quarterbacks land? Because a lot of them have had some down seasons. Some of these studs that have really overperformed our expectations, how do they fit in? Some of the late round gems, where do they fit in? All that's going to be kind of covered in today's video. So if you guys do enjoy today's video, please hit the like button, comment any of your thoughts down below as well, and subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you guys want to become a member of the channel, you guys can go to our YouTube channel, Fantasy Stock Exchange, and hit the join button. You'll get priority response to comments and community polls, community live streams, emojis, badges, all that good stuff. So without further ado, Danny, how you doing?
I'm doing well. And yeah, this is a fun video to kind of overlook because, again, we thought we knew a lot going into the year. Well, guess what? This year just threw us for a loop. Yeah, there's a ton of changing dynamic in terms of the market, in terms of how these players have played. And as a result, you guys are going to see this mock draft, compare it to what some of our mock drafts going into the year, and see a lot of change because, simply put, some players have balled out. Some players have just fell flat on their face. But yeah, I'm ready to roll. I'm ready to get into this. It's going to be a fun activity to do. And I'm sure a lot of you guys who are in Dynasty Fantasy Football kind of want a summarization of summary of exactly what happened this year, as you said. But yeah, fired up. Let's hit the intro and get right into that first pick. All right, so we're going to start off with the first pick. Do you want the first or the second pick, by the way? We're going to be alternating.
I'll give you the first pick. I think we both kind of agree with this. I think there is a clear first and second overall pick in the redraft version. Again, we are doing this from a super flex perspective, so quarterbacks are going to have higher value than they would have been really coming into the season. Coming into the season, both of us had quarterbacks as our first and second overall picks. We both had Trey Lance at 101, and we both had Trevor Lawrence at 102. We're both making changes right now based on the performance and, the lack thereof in Trey Lance's case of those two players. So who do you have going at 101 here?
Yeah, and again, going into the year, I didn't view this guy as a generational player. I thought he was a very, very good prospect, but the draft capital, the performance, his connection with his quarterback, everything we have seen has pointed to the fact that Ja'Marr Chase, if you were to redraft this rookie draft, would indeed be the first overall pick. This guy has almost 1,100 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns in his first 14 games as a pro. We have seen that connection with him and Burrow really blossom. And again, you're talking about a 21-year-old absolute dynamite at the receiver position. If you guys were going to go into startups this offseason, he'd almost be assured as a locked and loaded top 3 receiver off the board and is going to be a top half of the second round type of pick. I mean, naming non-quarterback assets you would rather have over a guy like Ja'Marr Chase, you probably can't even count on one hand. That's how talented, that's how good he is, and that's how nice the situation is for Ja'Marr Chase long term. It was a close choice between him and 2, but I do think if I'm on the clock right now, no clear intended need, I would go with Ja'Marr Chase. So what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I have no qualms with the pick. Again, I was kind of like you. Ja'Marr Chase, again, he had a first-round grade for me, a mid-first-round grade for me coming out of school. I didn't necessarily think he was a transcendent generational prospect like he's kind of shown. And based on his rookie season, again, if you put up, the players that, put up 1,300 yards, which is probably what he's going to have by the end of his rookie year, 10, 11, 12 touchdowns, you're going to get a very elite company list with, Odell Beckham Jr.'s and Justin Jefferson types that we've seen produce, at a high level in fantasy for a number of years. So Ja'Marr Chase is already in elite company. He's already a top 3 dynasty receiver for both of us right now. I have no qualms putting him as the first overall pick in a rookie superflex redraft because I think he simply outplayed these quarterbacks. I know the positional advantage of quarterback and running back tends to take effect in these rookie drafts, but bar none, the best rookie in the NFL has been Ja'Marr Chase, especially from a fantasy perspective.
For sure. And again, before we go into the second overall pick, I just want to reiterate to the crowd that the market may disagree with some of our valuations. What you should do by watching this video is kind of taking our thoughts, seeing how you can apply it to the market. So, for example, the guy that's coming up at second overall, guess what? If you're in a rookie draft right now, based off market expectations, you probably wouldn't have to take him second overall. But based off his projected outlook going into 2022 and beyond, he's a guy we are pounding the table for. He's a guy that we are well above the market on, and take it away with that second overall pick in Javonte Williams.
Yeah, Javonte Williams, to me, there is not more than probably 2 running backs that are currently young assets that I would take definitively over Javonte Williams. The only 2 running backs I would say definitively I would take over Javonte Williams in Dynasty right now are Jonathan Taylor, who is in a tier of his own, and DeAndre Swift, who's probably in a similar tier with Javonte Williams. And then if you want to get into some veteran running backs, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey would probably be the only 2 running backs that I would take in the like veteran win now type of mold as over Javonte Williams. You're talking about a top 5 dynasty running back at that point, right? Like locked and loaded top 5 dynasty running back. He is the 102 in my opinion. If I were to redraft this team again, it is a super flex league, so you want to give some lenience to the quarterbacks, but flat out this guy can play. He is a super talented running back. He has 5 to 10 highlight reel plays already in his career. Hasn't even, sniffed a full workload yet to this point. So I have no qualms taking him as the 102. And I think these top 2 guys were pretty clear cut for me. I don't know about for you, if you had, more debate. A lot of people, like you said, to your point on the market, might favor a Najee Harris. They might favor, one of these quarterbacks. They might favor Kyle Pitts, who's probably going to be coming up soon. What are your thoughts on Javonte Williams at 2? Is this a pretty clear decision for you, or is this a lot closer?
I fully agree with it. Again, he is also my 102, and I've talked about the fact that going into this offseason, he's not going to be escaping my top 5 dynasty running backs. And in fact, if I had to rank it right now, he would probably be my 4. You mentioned obviously JT and Swift from the young aspect. And then if you want to throw McCaffrey in there because of his generational type of output when he's on the field. After that, you're talking about straight assets at the running back position. Javonte Williams is already a top 15 running back in fantasy football on only 6 total touchdowns while splitting work with Melvin Gordon. So I do think this is a situation that when Melvin Gordon is a free agent in 2022, maybe signs a bridge deal as a James Conner type of back somewhere else, I think it's Javonte Williams season. I think this can be a locked and loaded top 8 type of running back at minimum next year. And if you're getting that at the age of 21, again, he is currently a 2000. Well, he's never going to change from being a 2000, but he was born in 2000. Okay. He's going to be a 22-year-old running back with a potential top 8 finish under his belt going into next year's draft. He might be, again, I don't think he's going to be on the same status as Jonathan Taylor, but a Jonathan Taylor light type of ascension I can see being in the cards for Javonte Williams, who has proven from a real life perspective, he's like a Nick Chubb type of runner where he's tough, he breaks tackles. I think he's a much more adept player in the passing game. I think he can contribute similarly in the touchdown department if you take Melvin Gordon and his vultures out of that situation. Javonte Williams for me, again, if you can acquire Javonte Williams plus for Najee Harris right now, which is what the market would dictate, you go out and you do it instantly. And I would actually prefer Javonte straight up to Najee Harris because, again, nobody's talking about the fact that Najee is going to be 24 going into next year's season.
Yeah, to your point on the Nick Chubb aspect, we've already seen the usage, the 2-minute drill snaps, the long down and distance work go to Javonte Williams this season, right? With Melvin Gordon still in the backfield. So there's a true path to 3-down capability, 3-down workhorse where he gets, the carries, the targets, the routes, the long down and distance, short down and distance, 2-minute drill, goal line, everything could be his this time next year, which is exactly why he's the 102 for me, 102 for you, the 103. And we both kind of, this is the first decision point, in my opinion. You could go a lot of different directions. Again, depending on scoring format and a tight end premium, I'd probably say that Kyle Pitts is the pick here for sure. But in a super flex league, I still favor our original 101 Trey Lance at 103 here. And again, this will depend a little bit on team construction. Maybe you're in a little bit more of a win now window with this 103 pick, this time last year, and you want to go with, a Najee Harris or a Kyle Pitts that can help you this year, where we've seen now after one season, we've only seen one game of Trey Lance in which he had 16 carries for 89 yards, which is great for fantasy, but he hasn't really taken over the starting job yet, which is obviously a concern.
Yeah, no, I fully agree here. Again, if I was picking at the 103, I would also have gone Lance. I mean, we have seen the elite dual threat capability of him when he's been on the field. You mentioned the sheer rushing volume that he saw. And I mean, San Francisco, for all holds purposes, I mean, they have the talent on the outside, obviously with Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Brandon Ayuk, but they have shown that they are a running team. And I think a very good blueprint to what we could see in terms of Trey Lance's usage as soon as next year is basically how Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense have been running. They are the #1 rushing team in football, specifically because of the dual threat capabilities of Hurts. Now you add on a quarterback that actually has an elite level NFL arm. We could be talking about a guy that is comparable to a Cam Newton type in his prime, where we saw 2015 Cam Newton was one of the best fantasy quarterbacks we've seen in the last 15 years. So yeah, I'm excited. Trey Lance is a clear pick, 21 years old, size, speed, arm talent. I mean, you name it, he's got it in abundance. And our take of him being the quarterback one going into the year has aged very well, considering obviously the other quarterback situations around him. But Trey Lance is a fantastic pick. 103 for me as well. Going into the 104, though, that's where you're also at a decision. I mean, you talked about Najee Harris versus Kyle Pitts here. I still think in a typical half full PPR type of scoring system, in terms of being a non-tight end premium, you probably have to lean the workhorse volume of a Najee Harris, even though he is an older prospect. Again, we've seen this year, very productive, top 6 running back in terms of points per game, getting a boatload of receiving opportunity, and he's looked good despite the situation around him not particularly being efficient, to say the least. Again, this is a situation where they're going to have to replace their quarterback after the year with Ben Roethlisberger. I do think they add reinforcements to the line, and maybe we see them from potentially being a bottom 5 type of offense. Maybe they ascend to a middle of the pack offense, and with the volume that he's currently getting, that ascension alone could push him into the top 3 to 5 in terms of redraft running backs next year. So although I'm a little bit lower on him than the market, I think at this point at the 104, you have to bite the bullet and you have to take Najee Harris, given what he's shown on the football field as a rookie.
Right. And I think right behind Javonte Williams, you could argue a number of the second and third year running backs in terms of dynasty running back rankings as well. And I think Najee Harris is right in line with that conversation. A guy that, undeniably is going to get fed the ball for the next, 3 to 4 years that he's a Pittsburgh Steeler. Hopefully the situation can improve. Maybe they go after a Russell Wilson. They go after, whoever. They go after a guy in the draft, Kenny Pickett. I mean, he's a Pittsburgh guy. Maybe they go after somebody like that. Either way, they need to get a better quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger, and they need some kind of semblance of an offensive line in order for Najee Harris to be productive. Now, that is easier said than done, but this is a smart organization that's been successful for a long time. It's not like I'm trusting, the Jacksonville Jaguars to do this or something like that. So I will lean Najee Harris as the 104 as well. You already kind of talked about the 105. It's pretty easily Kyle Pitts for me.
Yeah.
In a non-tight end premium league, he slides in right here. Again, probably would have been a little bit higher if he had continued that hot start or hot middle of the season that we saw from him, but he is still a rookie tight end. We're kind of seeing some rookie woes from him in recent weeks where he's not, completely able to make huge impacts on every single game, but we see him flash. We see the ability, and we know the usage, and the coaching staff is fully on board with how to use the guy, because he is being deployed about 70% of the time, either in line, either out wide or in the slot as a wide receiver, essentially. So Kyle Pitts, again, you can make the argument coming out of school that he was the number 1 or 2 wide receiver in this class, along with Jamar Chase. I still think you can make the argument, just because there's a TE beside his name, it doesn't really bother me as much, that he's the number 1 or 2 wide receiver in this class again.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I mean, he has shown this year, he's on track to be 1,000-yard tight end as a rookie, which, if you guys have studied the hit rates over these past few years, you have not seen a tight end come out as a rookie like Kyle Pitts has done. He's been really good. Again, the main question here is about how good the Atlanta offense is going to be, because obviously Matt Ryan hasn't looked like the same player, but again, Calvin Ridley coming back, they're going to add to that team in the offseason. I'm not too worried from that regard. Plus, Kyle Pitts is a generational type of talent in terms of his prospect profile. If you were to rank these assets, I think you would have to put those first 2 picks, in my opinion, if you were to rank them in terms of startup, probably to mid 2s, whereas these next 3 are probably locked and loaded 3rd rounders, if I were to guess. So either way, I'm happy with all 5 of these guys, but I agree with our current order. This is how I personally would rank them, and I'm assuming you're the same way.
Yeah, I agree. And now this is where it gets really kind of finicky for me, because we have seen some great other wide receivers, right? We've seen Jaylen Waddle have a great rookie season. We've seen Devonta Smith put it together at points. Yeah, I know. I'm just kind of overviewing the pick. We have, Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman. They've flashed at some points. We also have all these quarterbacks we don't know what the hell to do with. And we have another tight end too in Pat Freiermuth, and another running back in Travis Etienne, who's missed his entire rookie season. So where are you going with this pick? Are you going to go with a quarterback? Are you going to go with a wide receiver?
Yeah, like this is a clear decision point. I kind of texted you when we were planning this video. I'm like, dude, like between picks and like 6 and 15, you could probably flip them in any type of order. I think for me personally, I would much rather swing for upside at the quarterback position here. Again, that doesn't mean Mac Jones. That doesn't mean, as much as I like him, Zach Wilson. I think like the one of the picks here has to be Fields or Lawrence. And I'm willing to bet on the best prospect I've personally scouted with Trevor Lawrence. Again, it sucks because I love Justin Fields as well. I think he's well worth the pick here. But again, I'm not going to defend Trevor Lawrence at all. He's played bad this year. The situation looks awful right now. Urban Meyer was a clear mess. But because of how bad Urban Meyer was, I'm just looking at it from a projectability standpoint. Urban Meyer was that bad. The offensive line played horrendous, and all of his receiving weapons, for the most part, you're talking about DJ Chark, you're talking about Dan Arnold, Travis Etienne before the year, have basically just not been available for him. Given his talent, given what I saw in college from him, I'm still willing to, pull the trigger on him again. You're talking about relative value. He's probably fallen from the end of the first, early second going into last year's draft. So he's probably a late third, early fourth round pick where you have to bet on the upside here. But the upside, obviously, if he does hit, is a Josh Allen, is a Justin Herbert. And I still think that is in the realm of possibility. Again, could this guy end up being a bust? Sure. I'm going to bet on the talent here. I'm going to take Trevor Lawrence. And I don't know. I like playing risk versus reward here.
I personally wouldn't take Trevor Lawrence as the next quarterback off the board. I would take Justin Fields. And Justin Fields was my fourth quarterback heading into the season. And I had both Lawrence at 2 and Wilson at 3 ahead of him. But the thing is, both of those guys have played terrible, right? Trevor Lawrence, 5.8 yards per attempt this year. Like, that is like below the Blaine Gabbert zone of quarterback play. Like, he has been really, really bad. On a per play basis, 57.9 PFF passing grade, 69.3 QBR, and Zach Wilson, to his own credit, has been just as bad. 6.2 yards per attempt, 58.0 PFF passing grade, 66.4 QBR. So those two guys have definitely fallen probably the most of any rookies for me, those two quarterbacks, because yes, Trevor Lawrence does not have the burden that is Urban Meyer anymore, but let's not forget that Shad Khan and the Jags organization still hired the guy, and they're still in charge of hiring the right guy, which I don't have a lot of faith in. And they have to pick the offensive linemen and the skill positions around Trevor Lawrence to help him be successful. And I haven't seen, what Deshaun Watson showed his rookie year, where I'm like, okay, this guy might be in a bad franchise, but at least I can buy into the guy's talent and know that it's going to carry him beyond what his franchise can do for him. I think Trevor Lawrence has kind of been a little more mortal than I was expecting coming into the NFL. And for me, I'm going to take, at the 7th overall pick, I'm going to take Justin Fields, because I've seen more of he can do more on his own than what his franchise can do for him out of Justin Fields, of any other quarterback in this class so far. So I will trust on Justin Fields, because the rushing ability, everything that we talked about in the offseason, is still applicable. And we've actually seen the guy perform, not this week, but the 3 weeks prior, as a top 10 fantasy quarterback over that stretch. So this is a guy that, again, I have worries about. They don't have a first round pick this year. They have, a guy who had his first start at left tackle in Tevin Jenkins yesterday. They might clean house in the front office and the coaching staff as well. I expect them to be honest. So we have, a situation that could be in flux. And that was my concern with Justin Fields, but I've seen enough from a on-field perspective to say that I can trust this guy's ability even more so than what I can trust with Trevor Lawrence right now.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think, like, right now, if you were to compare their rookie seasons, Justin Fields has been a much better rookie given the circumstances available to him. That's a tough choice. Again, this is basically saying I believe in the player with Trevor Lawrence in terms of like what I expected going into pre-draft, but I think they're neck and neck here. You can make a plausible case for either of them going at that 106, and as a result, you do take the other at 107. So I like the pick for you. I'm actually going to go here at the 108 and take the second receiver off the board, and it's a guy that I had ranked 5 going into the year. I didn't trust the situation, although he had the tremendous draft capital. I didn't like the situation of Jaylen Waddle going to the Dolphins, but he has shown, in my opinion, to be the clear-cut second best wide receiver across the majority of the year. Again, you can make the case that some other of these rookie receivers had a stretch where they looked better, but I think from an overall standpoint, from an overall package standpoint, we've seen the usage we wanted from Jaylen Waddle. We've seen the talent. We've seen the yards after catch he's been able to create. And for Tua's own right, I mean, Tua's played very well this year over these last 6 games in particular. Out of the quarterback situation, I mean, I trust Tua long-term over Jalen Hurts. The only one that you can make the case for is maybe Rashad Bateman, but I don't think he's shown nearly as much as Jalen Waddle has in his rookie year. And listen, as much as I love Zach Wilson, I think Tua's shown more at this point than Zach Wilson has. So if I'm comparing comparable prospects and I get one that's produced more in his rookie year, maybe has a better long-term situation, I'm willing to move that up from 5 to 2. So I'm willing to take Jalen Waddle here.
Yeah, and I think the micro fantasy factors still do apply, right? We kind of get that lost a little bit in Dynasty because we're focused on the ability and the situation, the long-term outlook. Yeah. But this Dolphins offense passes a hell of a lot, man. Like,
Yeah.
Jaylen Waddle's 114 targets this year, which is a very
games.
impressive number in 13 games, but he only has a 23.5% target share because they throw the ball that much. So that is also an important factor. And whether it is Tua going forward, whether they do end up trading for Deshaun Watson or whatever the case ends up being, I have more faith in the Dolphins than I do in some of these other franchises with these young receivers. So I do think Jaylen Waddle has kind of surpassed, Devonta Smith, Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, that tier of, the elite first round receivers that we had coming into the draft cycle. And then after they got drafted as well, I think Jaylen Waddle has kind of surpassed those guys as the clear next guy behind Jamar Chase.
Yep. No, I agree there. Picked him here. Where are you leaning here at the 109 spot? Because I have a name that I personally would go with. I want to see if it's the same one.
Yeah. So I would imagine a lot of people think I'm going to take Zach Wilson here. If they know anything about me, they probably think I like Zach Wilson here. I think that Elijah Moore has surpassed Zach Wilson for me in terms of dynasty value, because he has proven what Zach Wilson has not. The on-field play has been phenomenal for Zach Wilson.
So the question
for Elijah Moore, sorry.
The question I have personally is where, like, if it was just you doing the draft, where would you have taken?
He would be the next pick for me. He would be the very next pick.
Okay, so you would take Elijah Moore and Jaylen Waddle above him and slide him down to the 109 technically off the board then.
Right.
Okay.
That is probably where I have him, just because
that's fair.
Yeah, because all the reasons I kind of just mentioned, but Elijah Moore, and I'll actually put this on the screen right now. When you look at Matt Harmon's reception perception, which we talked about throughout the duration of the offseason for the veteran receivers coming into the fantasy season, he actually did like a mid-season rookie report, and it pretty much played out exactly as we kind of thought coming into the year. Those top 5 rookie receivers that we had first-round grades on were all a cut above the rest of the guys, right? Like Bateman, Elijah Moore, Devonta Smith, Jamar Chase, Jaylen Waddle. They performed well against man, zone, press, everything. They were just winning on their routes, which is all you can do as a wide receiver. You don't control how good your quarterback is. You don't control how good your offensive line is. As long as you're creating separation, getting open and catching the ball, that's really all you can do to your offense. And that's what Elijah Moore brings to the table, which is why I would take him over his teammate, even though the positional value is higher for Zach Wilson.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Again, I mentioned going into that pick that there was one name I would be eyeing. It would be Elijah Moore. I mean, this guy has shown, as you mentioned, with the reception perception, ranking above 70th percentile in every single one. You're talking about man, zone, and press, ranking above 70th percentile in each one, which is remarkable as a rookie, specifically because of the situation he's seen. He's still able to beat coverage at a tremendous rate. And we saw a stretch this year alone where he was a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy with subpar quarterback play. Again, we still believe in the talent of Zach Wilson long-term. We think that the situation in terms of the organization is going to be able to fix itself out. Talk about adding Mekhi Becton back. Maybe you add a bookend for him and an Evan Neal, Ikam Ekwonu in the draft. There's so much potential here with this Jets organization to be able to flip this offense on its head that I'm still willing to buy in. And even if it doesn't fully flip, Elijah Moore showed that he's able to overcome situation regardless. Again, most drafts, you're probably going to see him fall below some of these quarterbacks, fall below a Mac Jones, fall below some of these running backs. Elijah Moore is one of my main targets in Dynasty. I think if I was doing a startup tomorrow, he would probably be a 5th, 6th round value for me that you can currently get in about the 8th round.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of Mac Jones, maybe people are screaming at their screens right now. How are these guys not talking about Mac Jones right now in a super flex format? I play Dynasty to win. I don't play to come in 7th place. And Mac Jones has looked very good as a real-life NFL quarterback, but the guy is averaging 2 more points per game than Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and Justin Fields right now, despite playing miles better than both of them. And again, his franchise, unlike what I talked about with Jaylen Waddle, they're not a pass-heavy team. They're not going to be a team that's going to throw the ball 40 times a game. They're not going to be a team that's going to surround him with elite pass-catching options to stretch the field. They're going to get more of these like Kendrick Bourne type of players in the draft, and they're going to be helpful, and they're going to help them win games because they're going to rely on their defense and, smart play calling and all that stuff. But the type of quarterback and the type of system that Mac Jones is in, I cannot take him higher than some of the guys that still have the elite ceiling that I still believe in.
Yep, I mentioned that. And again, segueing into the 110, you mentioned elite ceiling, you mentioned elite talents. Well, we talked about the fact that we had 5 first-round caliber receivers. Let's take another one here. Devonta Smith, wide receiver from the Eagles, kind of has seen Waddle, his teammate in college, and Elijah Moore leapfrog him in terms of our rankings, but he's still locked and loaded a stud for me long-term. I mean, this guy has shown, despite the situation, despite nagging injury issues, he's been able to overcome. Currently had about 800 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns in his first 14 games as a pro. And I expect that connection with him and Jalen Hurts to keep keep on growing. And this guy's shown that despite being realistically, aside from Dallas Goedert, the only real receiving threat on this team. I mean, are we really trusting Quez Watkins and Jalen Reagor? No. Despite that being the case, as a rookie wide receiver playing the majority of his snaps as the X, which I thought he was a more Z type of profile, flanker type of profile coming in, he's performed admirably. If this is a team in the Eagles who has 3 first-round picks, they could add a Garrett Wilson type, a Treylon Burks type, a Drake London type. And I think that would be perfect for Devonta Smith long-term to have a more big physical type of X to play alongside of him. Because I do think that in this situation with Jalen Hurts, maybe a quarterback upgrade long-term, he could end up being the second best receiver in this draft. I just think he needs the opportunity to. And he's shown as a rookie that he's been able to overcome the situation despite the Eagles being one of the least pass-dominant teams in the entire NFL.
Yeah, and that's really what kind of keeps him behind Waddle and Moore. Agreed. For me. It's nothing really that Devonta Smith has done. I think he's been fine in his rookie season. The reception perception numbers bear that out. He's been creating separation just like he did in college, but I think you got to put him behind because there is the risk they have 3 first-rounders. I think they also are a risk for a team, to go out and sign a Chris Godwin or a Michael Gallup potentially as well. So all those kind of factors kind of play into him taking a little bit of a slide. But if I were to do these guys like dynasty wide receiver rankings, all 3 of these, and the next guy that we're going to talk about too, and these rookies are going to be all in the same range. They're all going to be in the same tier. So realistically, there's not a huge difference between them. With the 111, I am going to take Zach Wilson because I kind of already talked about him.
I just wanted to say one more thing. I do think that if they sign a receiver in free agency, it will only benefit because, again, we're talking about one of the least pass-happy teams in the league. I don't think they're doing that because they want to just say, oh, yeah, we just want to run the ball every play. I think it's because they look at their receiver room, see Quez Watkins, see Jalen Reagor, and realize, oh, we physically can't be one of the more pass-happy teams in the league because we have dog crap at wide receiver outside of Devonta Smith.
Right. And I think Gallup is, I don't want to see, he's like the same type of receiver that Reagor was supposed to be, right? So with Gallup, like a guy like Gallup, I think would make a lot of sense for them. Anyway, we're not talking about the Eagles offseason plan. Zach Wilson, like I said, is the guy that I would pick at the 111. I would actually pick him at the 110 ahead of Devonta Smith, but he would be the guy that I would go with here. Again, the same points apply to Trevor Lawrence as they do for Zach Wilson. I think that needs to be hammered home because the market isn't doing that, right? Everybody will excuse the Urban Meyer situation for Trevor Lawrence to some degree. Maybe they'll be like, oh, well, he had Urban Meyer, so can we really blame him? But in my opinion, the same analysis that I applied to Zach Wilson, why I liked him more than Justin Fields coming into the year, was that I believe in what his franchise is doing. And Zach Wilson himself has not played well on the field. I cannot deny his play. His play has not been good. But at the same time, that Elijah Moore and Michael Carter stretch happened when he was hurt, right? Like when those guys were on the field playing well, he wasn't on the field. Not to mention his star left tackle, Mekhi Becton, has not played since week 1. He has really had, he had 2 or 3 weeks ago, that game that he played, he had neither of his starting tackles. He didn't have Corey Davis. He didn't have Elijah Moore. He didn't have Michael Carter. He didn't have Tevin Coleman. Like the guy had no help out there. And again, I can't excuse all of his play because it is on him to some degree. He's missing throws. He's, rattled or whatever the case is. But I trust his franchise more than I trust the Jags, and more than I trust the Bears, to be honest, to be able to build whatever, weapons he needs around him, because I've seen Joe Douglas make smart moves already. I've seen Robert Saleh, be a pretty solid coach already as well. So Zach Wilson, that is the only reason I'm still kind of buying into him. If he was in the Jags organization, I'd probably be writing him off right now based on his play. But the fact that I believe in the organization to some degree, again, it's still the Jets, but I believe in it to some degree, that is enough to keep me going on this path of I still believe in Zach Wilson. But I'll turn it over to you with the 112 because I already gave the case for him.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Zach Wilson is a fine pick. Now we're kind of at a point where, do we go with a Rashad Bateman? Do we go with an Elijah Mitchell? That one's really close for me, that comparison. I still believe in the talent, the separation that we've seen from Rashad Bateman as a rookie. Again, the main situation, the main cause of concern here is the fact that Marquise Brown's a lot better than we thought he would be. And Mark Andrews has, developed into a 1,200-yard, 12-touchdown type of tight end, which, I didn't see that being the case, but it was definitely in the range of outcomes. But I do think that, again, the separation has been phenomenal. You guys will probably see Matt Harmon's perception on the screen. He is separated an elite rate. It's just with Lamar Jackson obviously dealing with his issues right now. Obviously, he's not playing. Mark Andrews being the guy he is, Marquise Brown being as good he is, we haven't really seen the volume transpire to Rashad Bateman at the NFL level, but I still believe in the talent. I still believe in the separation. I do think that once he receives a volume uptick, he's going to be a locked and loaded wide receiver 2-3 type for the rest of his career at minimum in fantasy.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think there's a lot of directions you could have gone at the end of that first round range. I think, from the 110 on, you could have gone a bunch of different directions. Speaking of going a bunch of different directions, we'll give you guys a little bit of a switch up. We got to hear from our friends over at Manscaped. They got to pay some bills around here, so you guys will be hearing that right now, and then we'll get into the second round of this draft.
Hey lads, this FSC video is brought to you by the global leaders in men's below-the-waist grooming, Manscaped. This holiday season, equip yourself or a loved one with the premier men's groom product available on the market. Manscaped is the ultimate gift, and they're here to change the men's grooming game for good. Don't go into 2022 without the premier men's hygiene product available on the market, including the Performance Package 4.0, which will be sure to leave the men in your life excited for this new year. This hygiene bundle includes the Lawnmower 4.0, Weed Whacker, Boxers, Travel Kit, and liquid formulations. The new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer is waterproof with advanced skin-safe technology to reduce against nicks and cuts, something your Jingle Balls will most definitely appreciate this holiday season. The Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer can help you whack those gross, unwanted hairs in your ears and nose, and this product also has the proprietary skin-safe technology to help prevent against nicks, snags, and tugs. The Performance Package also includes Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant to protect against chafing, as well as their Crop Reviver Ball Toner, which will keep your boys fresh at all times. On top of everything, they've even thrown in the Shed Travel Bag to carry your goods and the Manscaped Anti-Chafing Boxer Briefs to hold the entire package together. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code BUSH at Manscaped. Promo code BUSH will get you, as I said, 20% off plus free shipping, but we're not done with the great news this holiday season. Check manscaped.com for applicable deals throughout the holiday season, such as this deal on the Performance Package 4.0, and remember to use code BUSH at checkout for the added discount of 20% off and free shipping. Whether you're gifting for your brother, your dad, your significant other, they'll all thank you for the crisp delivery and attention to detail that Manscaped has shown in their products. Again, we appreciate the support for the Fantasy Stock Exchange by our friends over at Manscaped, the leaders in male grooming. Join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped for their shower time routine by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code BUSH. That's 20% off plus free shipping. It's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com with promo code BUSH. Clean those ornaments and make sure your tree is desirable this Christmas. All right, so let's start off with the first pick of the second round. Corey, where are you leaning here at this 201?
Yeah, and I think the second round is a lot more cut and dry than the first round. There's a lot more discussion, a lot more big decision points. So we'll definitely go a little bit faster for the second round. At the 201, it's really a conversation between a couple guys for me. I think we're doing a disservice if we don't put Mac Jones here. So I'm actually going to take Mac Jones, but I do think that Elijah Mitchell, Travis Etienne, again, who we haven't actually seen play in the NFL yet because of the injury, but he does have to take a slide due to the nature of the injury that he suffered, being that he is a running back, and also the messy situation that he has with James Robinson performing as well as he's performed, and a whole new regime that's no longer the guy that drafted him in there anymore. So Mac Jones to me is just a much safer pick than any of those guys. So I will go with Mac Jones, first round draft capital quarterback. Again, maybe he's only a Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan level not NFL quarterback, but fantasy quarterback. Even still, if you get, a couple top 10 seasons out of this guy over the next 10 years, I think you'd definitely be happy with that pick. And again, you could argue that we're being, stupid and we're taking upside way too much. That's just how we play Dynasty. It's just a philosophy thing. If you wanted to play a little bit more conservatively, get yourself a locked and loaded QB2 in Dynasty, you could have taken Mac Jones as high as 107, 108, and I wouldn't have batted an eye.
Yeah, and again, I mentioned this 6 to 15 area is very, very fluid. I do agree. I would personally prefer the other quarterbacks over Mac Jones. And the market disagrees. I mean, you could, for most part, you could probably get Zach Wilson on a first for Mac Jones. And betting on upside, I would absolutely do that type of deal. Mac Jones is a very solid.
For the reference, I did make a trade for one of these quarterbacks with Mac Jones in our Listener Dynasty League. I traded away Mac Jones and Jerry Jeudy in exchange for a third-round pick in Justin Fields. So I made that trade in our Listener Dynasty League because I wanted to bet on the upside of a Justin Fields, because I do see the Cam Newton-esque traits that we've seen from him. So that's just kind of an example of what the market is valuing Justin Fields at relative to a guy like Mac Jones, even though we kind of know at this point in time that real performance doesn't exactly equal fantasy all the time.
Yep, for sure. So speaking off of Mac Jones, you mentioned there's a couple other considerations here. The big decision, I think, in my opinion, is going to come down to, do you take the draft capital of a Travis Etienne, or do you take the performance that Elijah Mitchell has shown this year, albeit with 6th round draft capital? And it's tough. Again, you want to bet what exactly is going to be happening long term. I can't necessarily give that guarantee of Elijah Mitchell nor Travis Etienne because of the emergence of James Robinson. But because of what I've seen this year as a rookie, I will slightly favor Elijah Mitchell. Again, although we don't want to trust Shanahan, he literally ended up starting the lower picked player in the same draft. Again, you guys aren't going to say Trey Sermon's name on this list. Why is that? Elijah Mitchell has surpassed him. That could end up being the case for, a Jeff Wilson, a Raheem Mostert next year. But given what we've
seen, those guys are both free agents too, which is very important for Elijah Mitchell. And I think they're just going to roll with Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon, or maybe they retain one of those guys and roll with them and Elijah Mitchell. But the one constant has been when Elijah Mitchell's on the field, he's getting a 78% opportunity share. He's top 5 in the NFL right now in opportunity share as a 6th round rookie.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the opportunities and we've seen the fact that he's produced on those opportunities. I mean, this is a guy I mentioned, you mentioned the snap and opportunity share, but about 4.6 yards per carry, which I mean, obviously isn't the most indicative stat, but it just goes to show you that he is a solid real life NFL running back. And again, 165 carries, 183 opportunities in 9 games that he's played. So absolutely love it. You see the usage. Again, the draft capital is not the highest, but we saw the same thing from James Robinson going into last year. Although I do think that, in fact, the 49ers are a much less bet to pick a running back in the draft like the Jaguars were when they took Etienne. So give me Elijah Mitchell here. I'll take it. I'm assuming you're going to go with Etienne with the next pick.
I am going to go with Etienne. And I think coming into this season and in rookie draft season, this was the right wide receiver range, right? We were always taking wide receivers here because this was like a much deeper pool. But we're kind of seeing what I kind of feared coming in to that rookie draft season was that these top 5 wide receivers are a bit of a cut above ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
And while the running back class wasn't very good either, it wasn't necessarily cut and dry that these wide receivers and running backs were separated all that much. So I will take Travis Etienne here. Again, he probably would have been off the board already if he hadn't gotten injured and if he was able to stay on the field this year, but that obviously didn't come to fruition. He still has, the same prospect profile that we had coming out of college where he's, produced at a high level as a pass catcher, as a runner. Everything is still intact, but now we have the underlying issue that Urban Meyer is gone, who is the guy that hand-selected Travis Etienne. Trevor Lawrence is still there, which is definitely great news, but what happens if we get a new coaching regime in here and they prefer James Robinson, or they don't, they just want to trade Travis Etienne altogether? We have no idea what is going to be in store for Travis Etienne right now, so that presents way more risk than a guy, in my opinion, like Elijah Mitchell, and I was the guy who had Travis Etienne running back 1 coming into the draft. So it isn't easy for me to say I take Elijah Mitchell at this point.
Yeah, no, I fully agree here. Again, that's obviously a decision point, but do I think Etienne's just dust because of the injury? No, I think he's going to end up being the player that we did see going into the year, but you have to take what's given. I mean, like, this is a serious injury. James Robinson's looked good. It's a different coaching staff than what brought him in last year. So there's a lot more risk there, even though Elijah Mitchell obviously doesn't have the draft capital of an Etienne. But either way, off of both these running backs, let's transition into basically the next mini tier. I think we pretty much agree that the Mac Jones, Etienne, Mitchell, we're pretty confident in projecting forward. Now we get into the range where we're going to have to most likely take shots, or as I'm going to do, we're going to take a less valued position. I'm actually going to go with Pat Freiermuth here. Again, that was a tough decision between the likes of him, Toney, Ramondre Stevenson, Michael Carter. But I do think that we've seen this year, Pat Freiermuth is going to be a long-term fixture in the Steelers' passing game plans. Has been a top 12 tight end this year, despite not playing significant snaps in every single game. And I do think this is a long-term career of being a middle to back end tight end. Like, if you were to tell me right now that Pat Freiermuth would have a similar career arc that a guy like Dallas Goedert has had, I would fully believe you. Again, a good touchdown score, good involvement. Obviously, we'll see how the Steelers offense transpires this offseason with Ben not expected back, but we've seen the talent we needed to. We've seen the involvement. I'm going to bet on him here at the beginning to mid second round of this redraft.
I think if it weren't for Kyle Pitts, we'd be talking about Pat Freiermuth a lot more. Because Kyle Pitts was expected to, break bounds for a rookie tight end, but Pat Freiermuth's had a really impressive rookie season as a tight end for how he's produced. He's on a career trajectory higher than I would say what Dallas Goedert has proven. He's more so in line with what Mark Andrews proved as a rookie. So I think that's definitely in store for him. And going forward, if they are able to, nab a Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, like somebody that is, a big time upgrade at quarterback, you got a nice young core of Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and Pat Freiermuth to throw to, with Juju being a free agent after this year and obviously not being good also. So let's get into the next guy. You already kind of talked about him. I think kadarius toney is probably the next name off the board here. Neither of us saw him as a first-round wide receiver, but the NFL sure did. And a lot of the NFL teams, by the sounds of it, not just the Giants and Jaguars, had a first-round grade on this guy. And we're kind of seeing why. He's clearly electric in space. And the one thing I will say about kadarius toney, when you guys look at his reception perception, which is on the screen right now, he's winning versus zone a lot more than he's winning versus man. And that's okay. We actually nabbed a lot of people on, not winning versus man coverage. And this is going to be, foreshadowing to a lessons learned for us coming out of the season. But we've seen guys like Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, Tyler Boyd, like just guys that are fantasy producers that don't necessarily win versus man coverage. And it's not really that big of a problem. It doesn't matter as much because a lot of NFL teams are playing zone coverage and you can deploy your wide receivers in advantageous positions to take advantage of zone coverage. And I think kadarius toney definitely has played his way into being in this conversation. Whether or not, he can stay healthy or not is a separate concern, but his play has definitely dictated him being in this position.
I mean, this is such a similar type of player in terms of, again, like they do it in different ways, but to what we saw with Deebo Samuel coming in, again, a player that's electric in space, a player that when they get the ball in their hands can create yards after catch, but a player that is going to deal with that nagging injuries. That's what I'm kind of worried about with kadarius toney, but I think he's shown clear cut now. Like I still believe in the juicy athleticism and the talent of a Rondale Moore, but at this point, you'd be crazy to take him to take Rondale Moore.
No, yeah, you'd be absolutely insane to take Rondale. I know the prospect profile was better for Rondale Moore, and also kind of back to the Deebo comparison, his prospect profile wasn't good either. So it does make a lot of sense to take Rondale over kadarius toney, but the reality is he's had opportunities to get on the field, right? He's had Hopkins being out for most of the year. He's had, opportunities to at least be a third wide receiver in terms of the routes that he's running, targets that he's getting, and they just simply don't want to give him that role for whatever reason. So we have to trust that assessment by the Cardinals franchise because they're the ones who are responsible for making Rondale Moore a fantasy producer. And to be honest, I'm still not ready to take him now.
Yeah, no, it's funny when we said that because you guys will probably see this on the screen, but basically Matt Harmon put the rookie receivers into buckets, and he had kadarius toney and let me check, Jaylen Waddle, I believe, as the flanker slot types.
He had Moore in there too. Elijah Moore in there too.
And Elijah Moore, and he had a separate category for Rondale being gadget receiver.
Right. And that was our problem, and my problem specifically with Rondale Moore coming into the NFL is that you really are at the mercy of the coaching staff, which in Deebo Samuel's case has worked out very well because Deebo Samuel has Kyle Shanahan, who's very creative and knows how to use a guy like Deebo Samuel. We have Cliff Kingsbury, who is like a Fugazi creative. He seems creative because he looks like Sean McVay, but he hasn't actually proven that he's creative yet. So that's kind of where I'm at with him. I'll let you make it to the next pick here so we can speed up the second round so we don't go too long on this one.
Yeah, for sure. And a guy that hasn't really changed much in our rankings, probably fell a few spots, but that's more so with how the Jets have looked. I'm going to take Michael Carter here. Again, he's been the main back there, obviously not that efficient on the ground, but has gotten the receiving work. And I do think this is a risk-reward type of pick where if the Jets offense ends up going to the degree that we think we do, which, I mean, isn't saying much compared to where they're at now, this is going to be a pick that pays off tremendously. Again, getting a guy that is a workhorse type back in his offense for mid-second round price, I think is going to pay off tremendously. Again, the concerns here, Jets offense hasn't looked great. They could always bring in better competition for him. Again, he was only a fourth round pick. This is a team in the Jets that's going to have multiple picks in the first few rounds this year. Could they bring in a Breece Hall, an Isaiah Spiller, a Kenneth Walker? It's absolutely could be in the cards, but at this current juncture, given what we know, I think Michael Carter is the safest bet out of every single player left on the board.
I think another piece that would make sense too is if they just brought in like a Ronald Jones, like somebody that could work on early downs, like just a veteran running back or even a running back in the draft. If there's like a Zach Moss type of prospect there that could come in and work in on early downs with Michael Carter, I think would also make sense if they don't want to, spend their early round draft capital on a running back. But yeah, so moving on to the next pick, again, there's not a lot of, very, very intriguing options. I think I'm going to just pay homage to a guy that I think is a good player, and that's Ramondre Stevenson. Yep. So I'm going to take Ramondre Stevenson here because I'm taking a shot at every other position on players that I don't know if they're good players or not. But with Ramondre, at least I know he's a good player. So I'll take him there.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Again, my pick was coming down to Ramondre versus Michael Carter. Again, the main difference there was a little bit of the pass catching, a little bit of the certainty of the role. But I mean, Ramondre has shown this year that he is not just the plotter that we thought. He could set the tone a little bit. So I respect him for that. clearly worth a mid-second round pick if we were to redraft, which in fact we are doing. But back on the clock here, I don't think there's much else to say other than the fact that take good players when we're in an ambiguous type of situation. Ramondre is a good player. Next player on the list is going to be Amon St. Brown for me. Again, hasn't been the flashiest of the rookie receivers. Again, he's clearly a tier below those top 5 guys specifically, and I'd probably a decent bit rather Toney over him. But at least we have seen the production over these last few weeks, albeit in a shitty situation with the Lions. Amon has looked good. I mean, he's getting the targets, he's getting receptions, he's been able to produce. We'll see how that changes in terms of dynamic with Swift coming back, but we had him as a better talent than he ended up falling to in the NFL draft. We had him both as a second round type of player. He ended up going in the 4th. It's a player I'm just going to bet on the talent here. Again, the situation might change dramatically. Could they bring in a quarterback? Could they bring in receiver help? Absolutely. But again, he's proven
I think
the
it's all
most
but
out
a
of this
guarantee they
situation.
bring in receiver help. We just need him to carve out a Tyler Boyd type of role, and he'll be good for fantasy.
And I think that's a very good comparison for him. I think he's got a lot of Tyler Boyd to his game. He can run that slot, be a consistent chain mover, which goes overlooked in the NFL. Again, we always want to hit on these home runs, but at this point in the draft, when we can't really identify talent that's hidden, just take a guy like a Tyler Boyd archetype where they can be a top 25, 30 receiver on a yearly basis, which I think Amon-Ra could well do in terms of fantasy production.
Yeah, and I think a lot of dynasty rosters with the amount of injuries we had this year would have loved to have a guy like Tyler Boyd or Amon-Ra St. Brown fill out their wide receiver or their flex spot. So after he's on the board, we already talked about Rondale Moore. I think this is probably where he comes off the board for me. Yeah. I would take him behind the guys that we already kind of talked about, but he does, he's still worthy of going in the second round, in my opinion. So I will take him after Amon-Ra, and then you're back on the board. And I think one thing that I would like to point out is that I think after like the 10 or the 203, 204, when we were doing rookie drafts, it seemed like the talent really, really fell off. But I think it is a little bit deeper than we expected.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree here. I will say, though, we mentioned deep. I think 210 is the clear cutoff. Like after Rondale Moore, you're taking straight projections here. And I think the guy that I'm most willing to project, given the fact that I think he's going to be a starting quarterback going into 2022, it's gross, but I'm going to go with Davis Mills.
Really? You're going to go Davis Mills there? I didn't expect you to go with him.
I mean, Terrace Marshall has shown me nothing. Obviously, we know what Trey Sermon is. De'Ami Brown has shown nothing. I mean, you could make the argument of Nico Collins as number 1 receiver too, sure. But at least with Davis Mills, I know if I'm going to be taking him right now, I could probably, if he has a decent enough start to the year, flip him for a 2023 second. And at that point, I'll take the potential market increase with him. Again, it's going to sound gross, but this has been the second best performing quarterback in terms of rookies this year in a shitty situation. Maybe I'm getting a long-term mid to low end quarterback too. Who knows? Because I'm probably going to be shipping him if he ever gets to that type of status. But 210, come on, man. Who else are you going to go with here realistically?
Yeah, no, that's a fair pick. And you already kind of teased it. My 211 will be his number 1 receiver, or at least his presumed number 1 receiver for the time being, in Nico Collins, who, again, referring to reception perception, actually posted pretty decent numbers. Yeah, better than, Terrace Marshall and some of the other guys. So I'm interested to see, what his future is going forward. He's had a couple games where he's flashed, commanded some targets here and there, but not necessarily a glowing rookie season necessarily, but a guy that has shown some promise. So I'll take the shot on him at 211. Again, I could have went with a De'Ami Brown, who I had rated higher than him coming out of school. He would probably be my next pick here if I were to be making this pick. But what direction are you going?
Yeah, I think it's between a few guys. You can go obviously De'Ami, Terrace Marshall, Chuba Hubbard, or like a Khalil Herbert type.
Khalil Herbert kind of fits into the category as, at least I know he's a good player. Like he does kind of fit into that category as well. So he does kind of give the nod for me, knowing that at least he's a good player. We don't know how his backfield's going to shake out. We don't know if, David Montgomery's going to tear his ACL tomorrow, right? And Khalil Herbert's going to have, a workload next year or something. So I think at this point in the draft, just bet on players that you've seen kind of produce already, which is what Herbert's done.
We're also underrating the aspect that David Montgomery is not on this team long term. I believe next year is his final deal in his rookie year, 4-year rookie deal. So, I mean, I will take Khalil Herbert here because at least do I want to bet on Terrace Marshall, who's got the profile of, the next Jalen Reagor? Do I want to bet on that? De'Ami Brown, I love them going.
Or the guy that I compared him to coming out of school, which was Denzel Mims.
Yeah, so there's just so many question marks at the receiver position. I like the talent going into the year, but unfortunately, it just has not transpired. And we want to hold at least some production accountable there. At least with Khalil Herbert, you mentioned he's looked good. He's looked efficient, averaging over 4 yards per carry, and what's been a pretty below standard, to say the least, offensive situation with Chicago. At least I know he's talented. I'm going to take him here. Anything else you have to add on him, or should we wrap this up?
No, we can wrap this up. And I think a couple guys that I do want to mention, because they haven't gotten a whole lot of run. 2 tight ends, Hunter Long, who is going to be the replacement technically for Mike Gesicki after this season, because we don't know what his contract situation is going to be. Maybe Mike Gesicki re-signs with Miami, and then this is obviously a moot point. But another guy who's kind of emerged recently is Brevin Jordan for the Texans. So again, a lot of people liked him more than where he was drafted, which was the 5th round. He was a guy that a lot of people thought would be a day 2 tight end, slid to the 5th round, but he's kind of shown some promise, caught some touchdowns in recent weeks. So he'd be a guy I'd consider going forward here. Obviously, De'Ami Brown, who we already kind of talked about, we thought he would be a lot better this year because he has really had opportunity with Curtis Samuel's injury and Logan Thomas's injury as well to produce opposite Terry McLaurin. He hasn't really gotten the job done. So that's definitely, not ideal. And also Josh Palmer, I think, is worth mentioning as well, with Mike Williams, who is going to be a free agent after this year. And Josh Palmer, in his one game, really, where Keenan Allen was out and he was playing that role, was pretty productive. And we don't really know what his role would be with Mike Williams out of the lineup and no longer on the team. But I think I've seen enough to say that he has some, ability.
Yeah, no, I fully agree there. Those would be the honorable mentions again.
And then maybe Chuba Hubbard, Kenneth Gainwell, as well as running back options that we didn't really talk about either. But yeah, nonetheless, you got anything else you want to head out of here?
Nothing else much to say. Again, if you guys have made it this far in the video, you enjoy our content, specifically our Dynasty content. Again, we're heading into Dynasty season. For all of you Dynasty degenerates out there, guess what? We're going to be talking about a lot of Dynasty mocks, a lot of redraft mocks, not a lot of redraft mocks. A lot of Dynasty mocks, a lot of Dynasty rankings, a lot of Dynasty-related content. If you are interested in it, that is your type of stuff that you enjoy, subscribe to the channel. We are so close to 10,000 subscribers. It's ridiculous. Appreciate all of you for supporting us for this long. Peace out, y'all. Enjoy your weekend.